come once again to discuss things.
No. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Sid Partuge. With me today is...
A geek for fun.
We should make like the Geeky Gentleman version of Dream Daddy. Like
Oh my god, yes.
Dream Geek. There we go.
Dream Geek.
That's how we're gonna make our millions. Anyway, so today we're back for another character discussion, and I've chosen a character and Alfie has no idea who it is, so this should be interesting. We're gonna talk about Majin Buu. Yeah. Been in a bit of a Dragon Ball mood. I feel like I go through phases with like characters and stuff that I like. It seems whenever I'm in a Green Lantern mood, I'm also in a Dragon Ball mood, and those things are always just kind of stuck in my head together now for some reason. I don't know why. I think it has something to do with the beams. Anyway. So yeah, I think we've done Frieza, we've talked about Vegeta, and about Goku on the channel before. So I figured we'd go for maybe a little less of a well-loved character from the Dragon Ball mythos. So let me just ask you this question, Alfie. Where does the Buu saga rank for you as far as Dragon Ball goes? Is it like high, low? You don't have to give me like your top 10 or anything.
It's definitely on the lower end, but like all Dragon Ball, I love it dearly. It's just compared to some other things in the series, I can definitely see the flaws come out, and it does feel, especially in the manga, which is like my main gospel for how I enjoy the series, the art really suffers in the Buu arc, and you can really tell this is where Toriyama was just exhausted. So that does bring it down a bit, but Majin Buu as a character, I don't think was ever one of the things that let that down for me.
Okay. I'm weird, I've realized among Dragon Ball fans. The Buu arc's probably one of my favorites. I think it's like, yeah, I gotta be honest, it's like Saiyan, Buu, and then, I don't know, the second World Martial Arts Tournament. Or no, it's the first. Which I realize that's a weird take, that the Buu arc is so high up. And it's one of those things where, like, anything that people have against it as far as, like, what it's doing wrong, as just, like, on a narrative level, I totally understand everything, and I think everyone that makes a point about why it's bad is probably right. And I don't care, and I still love it. You know? Like, it's... Okay, so when I was watching Dragon Ball for the first time, Dragon Ball Z for the first time, let me put it that way, you know, I got in kind of midstream during Namek, and I saw Goku go Super Saiyan for the first time and defeat Frieza, and then I was hooked, and then I started watching, you know, the Android and the Cell saga, and I was really into those for a while, and then I was, like, very let down because I was like, oh, it's just about becoming Super Saiyan again. That's pointless. It takes the cool away from Super Saiyan. And then so when we got to the Buu arc and so much of it was revolving around Super Saiyan 3, I was getting really, really annoyed. But then it is objectively a terrible narrative device to use because it does not build any trust between your reader and your audience, or your writer and your audience, but all the goddamn fake outs in the Buu arc of this will be the thing to defeat him, no, this will be the thing to defeat him, no, Gohan will defeat him again, left and right, I was in love with it. I was edge of my seat as a kid, and as cheap as a narrative device as it is, I still love it to this day. And so the Buu arc, for that reason, has kind of been in one of my top places for Dragon Ball. But also because Buu is just it's when the show got so weird, which like it was weird for me because I watched Dragon Ball Z before Dragon Ball, like any American fan, and like I was used to some of the jokey stuff in Dragon Ball Z, but obviously it was always toned down. But Buu was kind of the, all right, let's just let Toriyama do whatever he wants now era, and or like a return to that where his humor got to come through so much more, and you got so many ridiculous fucking gags. Like the whole, one of my favorite things in Dragon Ball lore is fusion, and it's never worked. It's never been the thing to defeat anybody.
It arguably makes things worse.
I know, and I love it for that. It's such like a goofy, cool concept all wrapped into one, which is kind of just the most Dragon Ball thing to me. And Boo is like, oh, let's retroactively make him more like Cell by absorbing people. Okay, let's just see how far we can ride this train. And it just gets so ludicrous, and I love Boo for that. He evolves and changes so much along the way in the story, and there's a really good chunk of it that's Super Boo, and he is pretty much just generic Cell. But man, like that's the point at which things are the worst for our characters. And then when you get like pure Chaos Kid Boo, and then of course you got Fat Boo, I love all of them. They're all my baby boys.
I'm with you on two of them.
Yeah?
Yeah, I really love Fat Boo's such a creative idea for a villain. It's such a cool thing for a Dragon Ball character to like, okay, like how can you up the stakes in a show about punching and blasting people? Here is literally a marshmallow. Like, how could you beat up a marshmallow? It's the ultimate brick wall. It's the ultimate thing that you could even make the argument at the time that Vegeta's fighting Majin Buu. Vegeta's a better fighter. Vegeta's probably got more strength or just knowledge, and he's kicking his ass a lot of the time. But he's not doing anything, so he's just standing there until he's not tired enough where Buu can just beat the shit out of him. And that's such a cool idea for like a threat where you have to think. Then you can't just outskill it. And then you get Kid Buu. And Kid Buu's like the most, for a final villain of Dragon Ball, is, if you're not going to do Frieza, I think Kid Buu's probably the best thing, where it is just the idea of combat, and it's Goku in his purest form of like, this is just something that will fight, sleep, and go crazy. It is like the ultimate fighter, and Goku loves that, and then he redeems at the end. Super Buu, however, gets the most screen time, and it pisses me off. Super Buu is the least interesting one of both of them. It's like, and then he keeps his power, lets him get less and less interesting as he's going, and he didn't have a good base to start with. By the time you get to Gohan Buu, he's just Sal but not as cool. Like, you said you're more generic Sal, but like legit, and Sal was already bordering on more generic Frieza.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's really no denying it. Super Buu, or Evil Buu, whatever you want to call him, is by far the weakest point. I think if it had gone from, Majin Buu, and then I don't think you could go straight from Fat Buu to Kid Buu. I think you lose something if you don't have the escalation of Super Buu. But yeah, it's undeniable that he is just kind of awkwardly there. And, I really did like the point you made about Majin Buu is like, just fighting a brick wall. Because... So we both watch Missed Air Fusion, right?
Yeah.
And the analogy they always use is there anything interesting about seeing someone punch a brick wall? And I'm like, yes, there is.
I'm with you there too.
I don't know, it's really... It creates an interesting thing because... So much of these, like, all of these guys have had that moment in the show where it's Vegeta with the punching machine at the World Martial Arts Tournament. Where it's like, everyone comes up and they barely tap the machine, and they barely tap the machine just so that they can get into the tournament without setting off any alarms. And then Vegeta's like, alright, fuck this noise. And he just punches the fuck out of the machine and destroys it. And... Like, that's just... These guys are on such a crazy level that that to give them an honest fight where it's challenging for them with someone who's just like them, yeah, it still can be done. It can still be done well. You know, Broly is a good example of that. But it's losing something, and like it's getting to that scale where it's so epic that it's becoming incomprehensible. So creating just a brick wall where it doesn't matter how good a fighter you are or how skilled you are, it's just invulnerable, creates a very interesting challenge for the characters, and so that's why I really like Fat Boo. But you're right, Super Boo is just, he is very generic. That is the point at which things feel like they are dragging the most. That is where there is just undeniably the most skippable content. Like, not even filler, because all of it's technically necessary.
Yeah.
But just skip these 3 episode sequence of him fighting, fucking Gotenks. Just skip it. It's fine. You're not missing like actual drama, but then at the same time you don't get like the ghost kamikaze attack. You know, that shit's awesome. Yeah. So like Super Boo, I'm able to tolerate because everything around him is amazing. That's the thing for me. Super Boo is by far the worst section of it, but that's where you got Super Saiyan 3. That's where you got Fusion. That's where you've got fucking crazy ass attacks. That's where you got Gohan getting pwned, which is always fun for me. So yeah, that kind of stuff really does work for me though.
Yeah, I think there's again, the Buu saga is definitely, it feels like Toriyama was okay. I'm out. This is it. This is my last one for sure this time. Fuck it. I've got a load of ideas still, but I can't be bothered to make more arcs. Let me just throw everything in this last one.
I definitely agree with that. So do you have so it's between Fat Boo and Kid Boo for you, but which one do you like more?
I think I like Fat Boo more, simply because I think in concept both of them are good, but Fat Boo's just given more. Like Kid Boo's really just for the last fight, and he's perfect in that role. I don't think he could be last. What's good about him is it defeats the purpose of Dragon Ball because he's the only one who isn't going to stand there and let them do it. He shows up and blows up the planet immediately, and that's what makes you think, oh shit, this is the force of nature. We can't reason with this at all. So he's good as like the last final boss. But Fat Boo you actually get to do some character work with, and I really like that. And even to this day in Super, I still like what's done with him, because you get this idea of just this ultimate thing of destruction that's been created, but it's also had like this injection of innocence in very much the same way of like a parallel to Goku. So it works as like his final villain to fight. Is he starts off pure evil, and then suddenly he's almost like he hits his head, he turns good, but he's still confused and being manipulated. And then you introduce that to Mr. Satan, who's like starts off as like the ultimate cynic, and he's trying to cover his own ass. And slowly, begrudgingly, he learned. At first, he's trying to just kill Majin Buu, but when he realizes that can't work, he's just trying to save his own butt. But then he sees the innocence of this like being, and he's like, oh well, shit. And then the thing with the dog, and then the bastard kills the dog, and then Boo heals like a blind child. Like, there's some really interesting shit there.
Yeah. Boo's got like the most interesting power set in all of Dragon Ball. Cause yeah, it's not like he's just unstoppable. He's legitimately magic, right? He's a genie. Yeah. And that's just really, really fun to play with. Maybe that's why I like Majin Buu as much as I do, because I really like genies ever since I was a kid. I watched Aladdin and I just have a thing for genies now. So maybe that's because I didn't realize that as a kid, that he was based on some kind of like, I don't even know, interpretation of genies or like inspired by genies, but he's got like these crazy magical powers, and he can't be controlled or trusted even in his best form, at first at least. Like, Deborah immediately realizes the threat of Majin Buu the second he's released and goes, oh no, we won't be able to control this. This is bad. We gotta get rid of this thing now. And that's again, the Buu arc has some really interesting characters that it did some stuff for Dragon Ball that I really appreciate in retrospect, and I've realized, like, kind of created some of my preferences. Because, like, right now I'm reading the Mark Waid Doctor Strange book, which is doing something cool where it's taking Doctor Strange and it's putting him in space to meet alien wizards, which is fun. And that's kind of what Buu is. Dragon Ball Z had been so, like, sci-fi centric for so long with, alien emperors and alien races and androids and genetic experiments. And then to just bring all the fantasy shit right back into it in that final arc with genies and demons and wizards, it's kind of cool. And gods, it's kind of fucking cool to get all that back right at the tail end.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea too. It was something that was overdue when, like, obviously everyone likes to talk about Dragon Ball in retrospect because it's just one of those series where everyone's got ideas for how they do it. But it is something I do think was missing, losing the spiritual aspect of Dragon Ball with then, like, the martial arts, not just that, but fantasy elements. Like, it's why you see, like, no more, like, animal people just randomly walking around the streets, or all the wacky characters that you'd see in Dragon Ball. So they're just gone by the time you get to Z.
But the king of the world is still a dog.
Well, I mean, it's more realistic than some kings. He's a good boy. But, like, yeah, it's just one of those things where I do appreciate that. But at the same time, I do think a lot of the critiques of that, and... Okay, I guess I'll ask you this, because do you think, as much as you like Majin Buu, could he still have benefited in some ways?
Benefited?
Like, do you think, like, the execution of the Buu arc as a whole and just Toriyama, like, being on his way out, do you think that hurt the concept of Majin Buu?
Unquestionably. Like, yeah. I honestly think Buu would have been a lot of people's favorite. I think the whole Buu arc would be a lot more well received if it had just been done, less haphazardly. Which is crazy because the only reason, like, everyone loves the Cell arc is because of how haphazard it is.
Right.
And so it's one of those things where it probably already exists. It's just probably in Japanese, so I'm never going to watch it. There's probably a cut of the Buu arc out there that's just taking out a lot of the fluff, but keeping the stuff that works. Just condensing it down, I'm sure that exists. Like, did we really need 20 minutes of Piccolo walking Super Buu through the tower? I'm pretty sure you could have just done with, like, the one scene of it and done the Piccolo mentally contacting the boys, and we would have cut that down to, like, 2 minutes,
Yeah.
But that was, like, practically a whole episode. So, like, shit like that, it's kind of doubly suffering. It's suffering from just the typical nature of anime to stretch itself out so goddamn long, just to try to give the source material time to get ahead and stuff, so they don't catch up to it. So it's got that problem to begin with, but then on top of that, it's got the problem of just being like throwing a bunch of ideas all at the wall at once, so Toriyama could wash his hands of it for 10 years, Or 20 years. Like, it's got that double problem. So it definitely could have been executed much better, and for that, Majin Buu would have been, I believe, a much more loved character. That being said, I am still really glad that he's sticking around. Like, I didn't expect Super to kind of run with him as much as they have.
Yeah, to be fair, like, both sequels to Dragon Ball have done something with him.
Yeah, I mean, GT doesn't do as much. He's only in a couple episodes. But Super, like, keeps him around as, like, okay, yeah, I mean, he's still unconceivably strong. It's just, like, shocking. Like, and that's the other thing I like about Buu is just how massive the threat feels. Like, Buu and Beerus have this in common, where they, Frieza never really felt all that massive of a threat to me until, like, they finally get him to his final form and shit. But, like, And Cell just drags for too long. But Boo and Beerus just are inconceivably strong in really fascinating ways. Like when Piccolo's master plan to trap Boo inside the Chamber of Spirit and Time, and Boo just screams a hole in reality and climbs through it. Like, that's what? I really like that scene. I don't really have much else to say. And then it's like kind of cool because you just get to the wackiness of Dragon Ball. It's like, oh, if one person can do it, anyone can do it. It's just gonna take the craziness, and so you get Gotenks to Super Saiyan 3 to scream their own hole through reality. It's beautiful.
It is a beautiful thing, and it's something I quite like as well, because Boo kind of, again, he mirrors that concept of if one person can do it, anyone can do it. Like, he straight up sees the Kamehameha like Goku, where he's like, oh, I can do that, and now he's just got that. He sees Goku using instant transmission, he's like, oh, I can do that. So now Kid Boo's got that, like, holy shit. It's one of those things where not only is he invulnerable, but if you fuck up your first chance, you're not going to get a second.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just very Goku. That is such a Goku thing. Like, oh, once you use a move on him, you can't use it twice. And that's just, again, it's really cool. And I don't know, there's so much around the arc that really makes it work, and I do have just a lot of love for the character because he's a great foil for the heroes. He does just so much to bring so much out of everybody else, which is great.
But that's why I also feel maybe there's a big issue of focus in the Boo arc, and I do feel like I've kind of been seeding this subtly, but there's a reason why I mentioned how much he parallels to Goku, but Goku's also barely in the Boo arc. And you make this really compelling villain for Goku to fight, but then we try and pass it off that first it's Gohan's villain, and then we say it's Gotenks' villain, and by the time you get to Boo and Goku, they're the most interesting parts to me because they actually play off each other really well. They have good chemistry, like both Fat Boo and Kid Boo play off. Those fights are really nice. But we've spent so much time with these other characters, it feels like this really should have been a Goku send-off arc if that's what it turned into at the end. But we're also trying to do this as the Gohan successor arc, and Boo really doesn't work as a Gohan villain.
I disagree because of Goku's quirky method for expanding his social circle.
Okay.
Goku's best friends are all people that tried to kill him.
Yeah.
You know, so pitting them all up against a character that mirrors Goku in so many ways, and they're all beaten by it, is something I think is really fascinating. Now, it's one of those things where the fan community has, you know, like, it's kind of become a meme, and people don't really take it very seriously, but I think there is legitimately an argument as to whether or not Goku's a good father. And, like, it's kind of a funny, like, Goku's a terrible dad, Piccolo's a better dad. Oh, but what about that time he hit Gohan or threw him at a mountain? Yeah, I get it. But the point we're making here is, hey, the main guy who's supposed to be pure of heart and all good is kind of a bad father. Like, so you have the kind of like questionable stuff that Goku does in regards to his children, and I don't know, that's kind of mirrored in Boo, and so you're having everyone that Goku surrounds himself with dealing with kind of the worst version of Goku in an interesting way, which is why I feel like it does kind of work to not have Goku present throughout the entirety of the arc.
I feel like the only one I can see that with, and where I'll be with you where it really does work, is Vegeta. I think that this Goku figure as what Vegeta ends up coming against him, like the whole Majin Vegeta part is like the best part of that arc by far. That's like, I think it's a really smart decision by Toriyama during that to not, even though Buu is hatched and he's got this great presence, he's still not the focus. It's just, your attention is still on the drama happening between Goku and Vegeta because that's been built up for so long. So it's a testament to how strong the writing is now, especially character writing is where Dragon Ball really excels at rather than plot. But so Vegeta's arc there and how he deals with Buu and what Buu represents to him and all of that works really well. I don't think I buy it so much with Trunks, Goten, or Piccolo, or Krillin, or even Gohan, because they don't treat it as anything more than just the usual threat, and that's mostly just because of how delegated a lot of those characters are to the background, and Goten and Trunks being kids and this being their first exposure to this, but no one else treats it with the same weight that Goku and Vegeta do when they meet Buu in different ways. Like Vegeta sees it as like this ultimate, this thing by wiping it out, he can atone for everything because this is the biggest thing ever. This is, if he can do this one good thing, and then at the end, that makes him rally to the earth and like forgive Goku and all that good shit. And then Goku sees this as like the ultimate fighter, and he wants it to be with like this will be his protege. But Gohan's just kind of there. He turns up and he's mystic and he acts so out of character, and he's just like, I'm not here to beat you, I'm here to kill you. Everyone freaks out about that line, but it's so something Gohan wouldn't say, and it really feels like Toriyama was almost forcing himself to push Gohan and Goten because he had this really good idea of, okay, I want the next generation to take over, but he just couldn't make it work, and then defaulted to, no, I still feel most confident in Goku, which worked out for the best, I think, at the end because we got a stronger finale, but it is really what kills that middle section.
Yeah, you're right. And so it's weird that this is a character discussion on Buu, but it's also just a review of the Buu arc. But I don't know, I think that those two, I mean, obviously they're intertwined, but I think that's the strength of the character, or the weakness of the character. Again, it's weird because Gohan never wanted to be a fighter. That's the thing, like, he did, every time he did it reluctantly. He had to be dragged along for it. And so, putting him up against something that just became, like, a pure fighter, put him up against something that just became purely adaptive to combat and all that stuff, it does seem like he's if you're willing to read into it more than it probably deserves, I'll put that caveat on it. If you're willing to read into it more than it probably deserves, it does seem like it's Gohan confronting the side of his father that is just not him. And as far as Goten and Trunks and Gotenks, that's probably the weakest part. But that is also the part that has just the most fun. And so while I do agree that is really rambly and has the least connection to Goku, I mean, it's still there. Like, you remember the first World Martial Arts Tournament where Goku's like, I just thought of an attack. It's called Tornado. And then he just starts spinning and he almost gets kicked out of the ring because he makes himself dizzy. Like, that's exactly what that whole fucking fight with Buu and Gotenks is. So, like, it's still there. It's just like, okay, and here's this other side of Goku, which is this just very innocent, creative, but not logical, talent, this raw talent kind of facing off. And Buu says that he was just toying with Gotenks the whole time and yada yada. I don't think so. I honestly feel Gotenks had a lot more, was a lot more trouble to Buu than he gets credit for.
Yeah, they were definitely, that's this thing I will credit, because I've been shitting on like that section of the arc. I will credit this part. I do really like that fight, and I do really like how the sense of threat with Super Buu is executed. If I don't find the character himself that interesting, is you get this escalation with Gotenks of using the Super Saiyan form. So we start off in base and he fights Buu and he can't do anything. He goes Super Saiyan and then he can do some things, but Buu's still got the power advantage. We go Super Saiyan 3 and he's just pounding on Buu and he's just absolutely annihilating him. So that's where I do feel like Gotenks, give him another 30 minutes, he probably could have won that fight. So yeah, I do think he's underrated there. But then the smart thing is, okay, we've established Super Saiyan 3 is the biggest power-up you could ever get. This is the coolest, most powerful thing. Then Gohan just shows up looking normal and he just fucking annihilates Buu, no swear. And that's really clever. Like, this was the thing you thought was the coolest. That subversion that you were talking about earlier, about it's kind of a cheap tactic of just being like, no, this is the real thing. But I think that execution there is very well done because you can identify those things. You're familiar with how strong Super Saiyan is. You're familiar now at this point with how strong Super Saiyan 3 is. So then you can gauge how strong Gohan is, rather than if he just turned up and there was no Gotenks thing, you probably wouldn't be as impressed at first with how like Gohan just annihilating him. Mm-hmm. So I like that part. I do think there's something there, if you want to talk about the fusions and like absorption, there's something going on there about the idea of two fighters merging and being compatible rather than someone just taking things. That you get Gotenks, who's basically the worst parts of Goten and Trunks, or Goku and Vegeta, because Gotenks is just like cocky Vegeta mixed with innocent Goku. And then you get Vegito, who's the best parts of Goku and Vegeta mix. So I think there is something being played with there.
Yeah. And I mean, you get the best line in all of Dragon Ball history. I'm a jawbreaker. Clunk. It's so good. Oh man. Alrighty. We do recommendations, but I'm not sure if there's really anything to recommend. If you've seen the Buu arc, you've seen pretty much the furthest Majin Buu will ever go. Like, he's in Super, but he's not super in Super.
Well, I guess a big recommendation is, I don't know if you keep up with us, and you probably don't if you don't, because right now in the Dragon Ball Super manga, Majin Buu is a main character, and Goku and Vegeta are out of the picture, and he's the one fighting the main villain.
Oh, wow, that is surprising.
Yeah, it really is. It's like tied into the lore of the Kais and the Grand Supreme Kai inside Majin Buu, and it's really interesting stuff. So if anyone does want to get into like more Majin Buu lore, there's a lot going on with him right now in the manga of Super, like a crazy amount.
Okay, that sounds really cool. I might have to check that out. I saw that someone post the panel of Vegeta like saving the Namekians, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so Alfie, who are we going to talk about next week?
I think I might just, because he's been talked about a lot, and you're always eager to talk about these pairs. So I think I kind of want to talk about Jonathan Kent.
Oh, okay. Wow, this will be fun. Alrighty. Cool. So next week we'll be talking about the innocent half of the Super Sons. All right, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm a geek for fun.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.